Your sensors are correct. Do not adjust your heading. You've discovered the Omega Particle, streaming to the Alpha Quadrant and beyond. Here's your host, the Anchorman of the Federation, the Doctor of Dilithium. This is Jonathan Wiegand.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Omega Particle Podcast. Like the man said, I am your gracious and humble host, Jonathan Wiegand, back from the dead. That's what it feels like with this DS9 review stuff. I think we're the bravest Star Trek podcast because we're going to admit sometimes DS9 wakes up and it chooses violence and it chooses absolute nonsense. And today, that is what we are dealing with. It is absolute nonsense. This is DS9 Season 1, Episode 16, Episode 15. However, Netflix or Paramount, wherever you watch it, break up the first episode or two. But for us, it's Episode 16. If wishes were horses, if this episode, I wish this episode would end earlier. Yep. Improv, Luna. Look it up. Luna the intern, everybody. Actually, if you didn't know, the title is based on a Scottish proverb that says, if wishes were horses, beggars would ride. Okay. And listen, if you have watched this episode recently and thought, did I actually put on an acid trip? Was this a PBS Wishbone episode from the 1990s? You know, Luna, that was so good. Wishbone played Rumpelstiltskin, but he just had a beard. And I've always thought, how do they get the dog to wear the beard? I don't know. That was my communicator. I don't know if everyone heard that. I just got a beep. No, we'll keep it in. It's fine. But this is one of those like wild, batshit crazy episodes from the first season of DS9. And we had Alan Moraine. I feel like this is like on the same level as Alan Moraine. Now it's a little bit deeper. It gets a little bit more, we'll get into the weeds a little bit, why it's so revealing of these characters. But no, this is real. This actually aired on television. Adults signed off on this. And it's tough. We've done, like I said, we've done Alan Moraine, but we've also had some heavy themes. They've done terrorism, they've done religious trauma, they've done post-occupation politics. So they're like, hey, fairy tales? And which is a bold pivot, I have to say, especially when you have a station that has a lot of war crimes on it. So bringing in fairy tales is interesting. This episode, I will say, I know I josh and I joke and I'm poking fun and just calling out the ridiculousness of it all, but this episode isn't dumb. It looks stupid. And I know stupid. I went to school in the Appalachian Mountains. I turned out fine. Don't give me that look, Luna. I turned out fine. So it looks dumb. This episode wears dumb clothes, but underneath, it's a very emotionally revealing episode. And I don't know, and correct me if I'm wrong, send out comments and stuff like that, but if I'm pushing too far, if I'm deep diving too much, you can tell me, because sometimes I have my AP English teacher, she had a good line. She's like, sometimes writers, sometimes the curtains are blue just because they're blue. There's no more anything into them. They're just blue. And maybe that's it. Maybe Bashir's just a horny dude and he's not reaching out for connection or anything like that. He's just wants to do Jadzia. That's the whole point of the episode. I don't know. Sometimes the curtains are blue. Let me know what you think. I love the dialogue with the DS9 episode, so please hit me up. Like I mentioned, we deal with, there's loneliness, there's grief. It's about what happens when people who are like kind of barely holding it together suddenly have their inner thoughts dragged out into the public view. And yeah, there's a goblin. Yeah, and a baseball player, but I think the whole station needs some freaking therapy. And you think in the 23rd century, therapy would be out there. It wasn't. We have holodecks. You think you would have like therapists you could talk to, but either way. So we're just going to set it up a little bit. But before we do that, just again, thank you all so much for listening to the podcast. Appreciate all you guys have done and supported us in. It's a lot of fun. We're trying to get video up because I know Spotify and all these other big platforms have video. And so I'm trying to get video up and going. It's a challenge, I'll be honest. So we're trying, the team here is trying to do it. It's going to be a lot of fun, but feel free to reach out to us. All the social medias, Facebook, Instagram, that's the easiest way to hit us up and to talk to us. Without further ado, Luna, let's roll that beautiful bean footage. So the episode reminds me that these aliens have zero boundaries. And we have first contact, of course. It starts off with first contact because Star Trek gets a boner. It loves nothing more than an alien species that doesn't understand boundaries. They love first contact. And these aliens live in a nebula. They're non-corporeal. They're just curious little air balls hanging out. And they're basically emotional toddlers, with these quasi lower G God level powers. They don't understand the difference between a thought, a wish, coping mechanism, or something you should completely keep to yourself entirely. So naturally, they decide to manifest people's imaginations into reality, which is the equivalent of saying, hello, we've been reading your intrusive thoughts, and immediately the station starts filling up with stuff. Is a better word to say it. We don't get monsters, we don't get ships, we get feelings, which are way worse. Nobody wants feelings everywhere. What is this? My what does this say? Intervention in college because I was dating the wrong lady? My friends actually did that. It was a very toxic relationship, and they actually sat me down one day and was like, you need to get out. It's bad. And I eventually did. But again, feelings are healthy, good. Please explore them. Please talk about them with somebody. Now let's talk about the man of the hour, Julian Bashir. Now this is his whole character makes this episode very inappropriate. Not inappropriate. I wouldn't watch this with my son, and I would feel awkward if you've never watched Star Trek before and I put this on in my house. It is, the episode roasts him unequivocally. It is embarrassing. The dude is painfully lonely. Not like evil lonely, where he's like, I'm an incel and all women are terrible. Or creepy lonely, like where he's like stalking people and liking photos from like 2 years ago or something like that at 3 a.m. That's not creepy. Who among us, gentlemen and lady, have not protruded the Instagrams of people at 3 a.m. and pray to God you don't hit a like button? But that's not creepy. But I'm saying, it's not a creepy lonely. He's just awkward. He's new. He's insecure. He went from, being the top of his class, the A game type of guy, to now he's on the quote unquote frontier medicine, controversial take for the Bajorans, on frontier medicine, kind of leading his whole medical department by himself, straight at the academy. And he's a little insecure. His station was essentially in this haunted strip mall, lack of a better term, and then very lonely, not away from family and stuff. So I'm just putting it in perspective because, as a 22-year-old man, I did live alone, and I had family in town, but it was incredibly hard coming home alone. I didn't like it, and so I sympathize with this because it's difficult. All of a sudden, he has this crush, he has this connection with Jadzia, and of course, he daydreams about being with her, and he dreams up this beautiful woman who flirts with him. She plays tennis with him and kind of exists solely to validate him and validate his personality, validate his wants and needs. Jadzia says, she's a little submissive, don't you think? And I think he just wants somebody to kind of mother him and prep him up. And it's not subtle. To me, the whole episode is a mirror to Bashir saying, hey, buddy, you need some friends, brother. You need to have some connection, man. And look, we can laugh, and we should, because it is funny, but it's also kind of sad. And in early season 1 Bashir, he doesn't want power, he doesn't want status, he just wants connection. And instead of asking for it like an adult, his subconscious kind of creates this fantasy who literally couldn't reject him, who is dependent on him, is needy on him, is overly needy on him. Kind of like my cat when I make a sandwich and she wants the cheese. It's overly needy, over the top. Is that a terrible connection? I don't know. It's just not a very healthy situation. And I really do love that the show didn't shame him for this. It just kind of gently exposed, hey, he's not this horn dog, over the top dude. He's not a villain. He's just inexperienced. He's young, and he's lonely, which I guess you could describe like half of Starfleet that way. And who amongst us have not been like that at some point in their life? Again, sci-fi is best when it holds up a mirror and can comment on society. And so, even though it's dumb and it's awkward as heck, it does bring some points to be like, yeah, he just wants some validation. Now, this is, again, like I mentioned in the start of the episode, are the curtains blue, or are they just, a deeper metaphor for male loneliness? I don't know. But it is interesting. And I think the writers tried to show that and maybe just got lost because it's just so much. Maybe got lost in that. But who knows? We could be looking back in 20 years and be like, man, that if wishes and horses, my God, what an expose to the male psyche. We could be saying that in 20 years. I don't know. So next is Miles O'Brien. And it's always Miles O'Brien, is it not? He's always got something. He's always the man who will eventually suffer more than anybody in Starfleet and Star Trek history, but however, the most important person in Starfleet history. So thank you. Shout out to Lower Decks for showing that. So he is the man who manifests Rumpelstiltskin, and not the wishbone. By God, I wish that'd be great, having a wishbone one. But this isn't a comfort fantasy. It's not a friend. It's not a memory. It's a freaking goblin. And it's kind of like the Goblin of the 90s with the Leprechaun movies. I don't know if you ever watched those with, I think the first one, correct me if I'm wrong, Luna, the first one has like Jennifer Aniston in it, right? Only thing I remember as a kid, if the leprechaun bit somebody's finger off or something for gold, it freaked me out. I was also afraid of people living under the stairs for some reason. But this Rumpelstiltskin, it's all about the bargains, baby. And we're not talking thrift stores. It's all about agreements that you don't fully understand until it's way too late, kind of like a monkey's paw. And that's O'Brien's entire life. He's reading the story to his daughter in bedtime, and then all of a sudden, this thing appears, manifests. And maybe that's because that's the exact moment the aliens were looking in, and he's reading the story. But, which makes me think, I think it would be hilarious because in real life, I read this book all the time to my son. It's called The Stinky Cheese Man. And which I know now where I get my sense of humor from. Is that stupid book. Because it's just so ridiculous, so anti-joke. It's kind of like The Ugly Duckling. The Ugly Duckling didn't grow up to be this beautiful swan. It just grew up to be a really big, ugly duck. And so I was recording this episode, I was like, or I should say writing this episode, I was like, this would be hilarious if a giant stinking cheese man came running around. And the whole point of that story is that he runs around and wants people to chase him. Nobody chases him. I digress. Great, amazing audience that you are. So O'Brien, he spent his entire career just being crushed by systems bigger than himself. He's been in Starfleet. He's been in war, bureaucracy. His imagination doesn't escape him, and it basically creates a lot of anxiety in him. And Rumpelstiltskin is very unsettling. He's manipulative, he's smug, he's threatening, and which to me fits DS9 more than it would say fits Voyager, where the guy would have just been defeated with a pep talk. Here it's just kind of like it exists, and especially near the end of the episode where Rumpelstiltskin's like, hey, give me your child for the sake of the station. And I feel like there was a moment like O'Brien thought about it. It's been like, okay. Because he has to save the station to give up his daughter. And it seemed like he was going to do that. which I'm glad he didn't, it is still kind of an expose in him. Not as much as I would say in Julian, but he definitely has a lot of anxiety, has some stress, and this kind of shows that with this unsettling Goblin around, and O'Brien takes no shit from him the whole episode. It's like, no, leave me alone, bye. Kind of the weakest out of the characters, to my imagining, like kind of the weakest link out of all of them. Because with Jake, this baseball episode, this is really the emotional core, in my opinion. So just to recap, Jake as a child lost his mother, was uprooted from Earth. He lives on a station full of adults and is processing trauma very badly. And then all of a sudden, his imagination becomes real, and he creates this Buck Buckeye, this legendary baseball player. And I think the choice is beautiful because he's on the holodeck, as he's explaining to Captain Sisko, or Commander Sisko at this point. He's on the holodeck, he's playing baseball, and then all of a sudden, Buck Buckeye just walks off with him. And baseball, like I was about to say, is a beautiful choice because baseball has rules, it has seasons, it has ends, it has structure. And with a child going through grief, that's very needed. And I wish, as a child who did go through grief, losing a parent at 13 years old, I do wish that I had that structure, that needed comfort, and I had to find comfort in other things, in other systems and other things. So it just, but I really related to Jake in this one, because what also makes it super beautiful is not because baseball's safe, but it is, but because Buck Buckeye, it just isn't Jake's fantasy, it's connection to his dad. Because baseball is how Jake and Sisko bond. That's how they bonded. When he realizes this, because Sisko, he's been functioning. He's been going through the motions. He's, after his wife died in the battle, is it 3491? Okay. 3491. We'll fix it in post if it's wrong. After his wife passed away, he's not been healing. He's functioning. He's being a commander. He's being a leader. He's trying to be a dad, keeping things moving forward. But when, in my opinion, just from the episode, when Buck Buckeye is suddenly standing on the promenade, Sisko realizes something devastating, that Jake has been grieving quietly, and that Sisko just hasn't seen it, is that he's trying to connect with his dad through playing baseball by himself. And to me, that's the core of the episode. And everything else is helpful in that and kind of sets the dressing and the sides. But to me, that's the main course, because it's still about a boy reaching out, trying to connect with his dad, and he hasn't been able to. I get hear people, John, it's too deep. It's not that deep. It's just, dude loves baseball. Leave it alone. And the fascinating thing about Captain Sisko is that it doesn't manifest anything himself. Because he doesn't let himself. He doesn't fantasize. He doesn't escape. He buries himself under that responsibility of the station, of being a dad, which is very early DS9 Sisko. He's surviving. He survives by not wishing. And this episode gently points that out, while it keeps him functioning, but also shows how really closed off he is. And DS9 for the next 7 seasons will slowly, painfully start cracking that armor on Sisko, revealing a little bit more. But then we'll also do that for all the other characters too, with Bashir, with Jake, and that's what I love DS9 so much, is because it is such a character development show. And again, this episode's stupid, it's ridiculous, it's awkward, but there is some good heart underneath it. It's like going to like a Golden Corral buffet. It's all just that slop. It's all just terrible food. But then you never know. They do have filet mignon, right? Right? So I mean, there is that good foundation there. Just everything around is just silly. And you feel like Golden Corral, there's nothing wrong. I'm sold. I grew up going to Ryan's. But to me, that's the episode, is that boy is reaching out for his dad. And I think the dad finally realizes it. And with Dax and Kira, you see moving on to Dax and Kira, you see two different reactions. Dax is, unsurprisingly, handles all of this with someone who has lived 7 lifetimes and has seen much worse. She's amused, she's curious, she's calm. She even says to Julian, she's like, I feel sorry. We should apologize to you because we're invading your personal space. We're invading your intrusive thoughts. We're sorry for doing that. And I was like, man, that's really deep. Again, living 7 lifetimes, very, very wise. But on Kira on the other hand, hates every second of it. Despises it, doesn't want anything to do with it. And you could even go deeper, because Kira grew up in occupation. She grew up in these camps. Fantasy wasn't anything comforting to her. It was dangerous. That's how you got killed. If you weren't paying attention and had your head on the swivel, it could have killed you or those people around you. Fantasy wasn't a thing. And so to me, her reaction represents denial, distraction, and avoiding anything that could be fantasy, anything that could be a coping mechanism with her. And her discomfort kind of grounds the episode. It reminds us that not everyone got to escape or gets to escape into imagination, that some people have to face reality because the situations are so dire, so intense, and they don't trust anything that smells weird or smells like fantasy. Moving on, the episode kind of falls apart, as all Star Trek episodes do. Things escalate. Rumpelstiltskin becomes openly threatening. The manifestations start to grow unstable. And the crew has to explain to these aliens why rummaging through people's subconscious without consent is actually bad. And then the aliens apologize. They withdraw. The mysterious black hole thing of the ship goes away when they realize it's all imagination. They're feeding into it. Which is something, I will say, that's something deep too, is that we sometimes build these things up in our life. We give them power. We escalate them when in reality there's no power in them. They're just this anomaly off the station that's by our own doing. So think about that. Like, what are we in our lives giving complete power that can control and destroy the station in our own lives that really doesn't have any power, but we're just giving it? So think about that next time you make fun of this horny episode. Either way. The aliens apologize, they withdraw, manifestations vanish. But emotionally, everybody goes back to normal, baby. No healing or growing for us. We are just going to bury it and act like it never happened. Talking about you, Thanksgiving 1998. What happened Thanksgiving? Don't worry about it, Luna. We bury it. We don't talk about it. Either way. So as we wrap up this episode, does the episode work? Does If Wishes Were Horses work? Is it a great episode? No. It's tonally weird. It's awkward. The Goblin is nightmare fuel from the 1990s Leprechaun franchise. The baseball metaphor is extremely on the nose, but sincere. And DS9 is experimenting. They're trying to see how much whimsy it can carry without breaking. And even though this episode stumbles and falls flat on its face and poops its pants, it reveals it has characters. And those characters have gumption, even if it's a quiet and in these quiet, small, meaningful ways. I really liked how the episode talked about grief and loneliness that people don't want to admit they have, and about coping mechanisms. I thought that was really great. Again, laying the foundation just a little bit for what we're going to get, the masterpieces in the next couple seasons. So this is definitely a crawling, experimenting episode, and I think it's fun. It's one of the fun ones, like from season 1. We talk about the ridiculous ones. This is one of them. And even though it's silly, it's kind of a good break, because next week we're going to be back to the politics, back to the trauma, back to the moral ambiguity. It's just all, it'll be back. This is a good break. And for now, let's just enjoy the fairy tale and have some fun. But, okay, so Some fun facts about the episode as we wrap up. Chief O'Brien's fantasy was originally going to be a leprechaun, but Colm Meaney refused to give in to the cliches about his Irish heritage. And in this interview, he remembered he was really upset about this portrayal of Irish people in Up the Long Ladder. And it was about, like, I guess it made him look kind of silly or kind of just trash the Irish people, I guess, in a cliche way. And he didn't want to give in to that and wanted to resist it. So he insisted that they would change it to the German imp Rumpelstiltskin, and they did. And reminds me, there's some deep Trek lore here, where in the very first Trek productions, in the original series, The Naked Time, George Takei actually asked for that too. He wanted to avoid some cliches for that episode, and they did, respectfully. So the baseball, my famous baseball, which Sisko keeps on his desk for the remainder of the series, leaves behind when, the Dominion take over DS9. This is actually a memento of this episode. This is given to him by the alien who impersonated Takei. So think about that. Next time we're in the war and it's bad and it's up to our knees and in blood and guts, it's like, oh yeah, this awkward episode. This is the baseball from it. And also, I love that, speaking of the aliens, they hinted, hey, we might return. You never know. And this was their last time. Typical Star Trek. Hey, always be on the lookout. You never know when we're going to be back. And it's you never back. Sorry. I feel like if we had $1 for every time that happened, we'd have like $15, which isn't a lot, but it is also a lot. You know what I mean? And then also the story for If Wishes Were Horses were actually very different than the final script and teleplay. Is that Michael Filler actually commented, it was a very hard concept to make work. Somebody came in and said, Jake brings home a baseball player from a holodeck, and that was the pitch. And basically they just did the Moriarty show on the holodeck and Next Generation. So they didn't want to do another holodeck show. So they had to find a show that celebrated imagination. Since that's really what Star Trek is. It's kind of a celebration of imagination. And yeah, so that's exactly what happened to it. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. So that's what they originally were aiming for. And let's make this a little bit deeper. So there's some fun stuff. And the guy who plays Bashir commented on this whole having Jadzia Dax all over him. And he actually said, I had no idea where to put myself, both me and the character. Having someone nibbling on your ear while you're doing a scene is something I've never actually had to do or deal with. It's funny because in the middle of that episode, I got what I wanted. I didn't know what to do with it. Partly because there was this real Dax floating around as well. It came to spirit loyalty thing. Much more of that sort of stuff, please. So he wanted to make out the real Dax, the imaginary Dax, but it's still the same person. That would be super awkward to have this co-working for a good couple months, all of a sudden be all over you. That'd be awkward as heck. But either way, that has been our review of If Wishes Were Horses for DS9 Season 1, Episode 16. Thank you all so much for listening. And Luna, let's wrap it up. Again, thank you so much for listening today. We're going to try to, for the show, try to make our Tuesdays the Deep Space Nine reviews, and Thursdays the fun, kooky episodes or deep diving holes or random episodes that we do. That's the schedule that we want to roll out, so hopefully we'll stay to that. And I think my schedule for work is going to calm down a lot, so it'll give me a little bit more free time. But again, thank you all so much for listening. It's been a lot of fun for everybody on Apple and Spotify, and your comments and just talking with you guys. It's just been such a fun community to be a part of. And I've realized that Trek is slowly becoming my first love, and Star Wars is becoming that random stepchild that I don't want to talk to. Because I love Star Wars, but gosh, it doesn't know what it is anymore and lost magic. And now, rewatching some of TNG and watching the original movies and going to see Shatner, I'm like, hey, this is my baby. This is my first love. I'm happy to be here. And again, I know we talked about some heavy themes tonight about loneliness, about coping mechanisms and grief. If you ever feel like you need to reach out to somebody, please do. You're very valuable, and we always want you around. So please remember that. And until next time, second start of the right, straight on to morning.